Alright, you guys, so in today's video, as you can see, we are going to be painting in Procreate. I wanted to complete another painting. I've been kind of alternating sketchbook spreads and completed paintings the last week or two, and I've really enjoyed it. And this particular week, I really didn't have a ton of time, so I went ahead and gravitated towards completing something in Procreate, because if you've watched my videos before, you know that it comes very naturally to me and is, I don't know, the workflow and the process is just very easy in Procreate. And through this process, I started contemplating a lot about color and color theory, and I wanted to, I guess, sit down and just chat with you guys about color perception. So if watching me complete this painting and chatting with me about color sounds like something you would enjoy, I'm Rory Fluent. Feel free to call me Rory. If you're new around here, hi, hello, how are you? Let me know in the comments down below. I like to create dope art content and hopefully curate a chill atmosphere. And if you're not new around here, what is up, my dudes? Let's get into this video. I went ahead and included my sketching process in this painting. Now, I ended up sketching this at work because originally I did not know that I was going to want to make this into a video. At first, if you were watching the sketching process, you noticed that I kind of was trying to draw multiple legs, like a lot more than 4 growing out of the lamb, and I was like, I don't know if that's working, what do I want to do? And then I decided that I wanted it to hover over the ground and have its hooves sort of clipped off, so it's just kind of pointy feet floating and then the hoofs kind of floating underneath of it, and then a shadow. And that's just kind of the image that I had in my head, or at least the idea of the floating lamb. And from there I decided to go ahead and create an entire piece. You'll also notice towards the beginning of the video, I know we're still in the beginning of the video, but if you were watching that quick speed paint at the beginning, that I started off with a much cooler toned color scheme. And not only was it cool toned, but it was very muted, and you'll notice that I am flipping back and forth and back and forth and back and forth currently in the video as I start to create another color palette to compare it to. Because I don't know, I wanted to take this as an opportunity once I decided at work that I was going to actually film myself creating this painting. And I wanted to take it as an opportunity to go ahead and try multiple color palettes, because normally I kind of stick to, or rather I in my process, tend to not experiment with color. Once I fiddle around a little bit, I decide on a color palette and I go with it, and I don't really question it. But I wanted to include, obviously, the painting process for you guys. And I wanted to do a little bit more than that since I hadn't included my sketching in the video. So I thought I would go ahead and show you guys kind of a really in-depth look at me experimenting with color. And more than that, not just experimenting with color, but iterating on the colors and figuring out what I like best and merging things together, and just really showing a more experimental side to my process. So I hope that you guys enjoyed that. And this is the point in the video where I'm actually starting to paint a little bit, and I promise we'll get to talking about color, but I'm trying to get the preliminary shit out of the way. But this is the point in the painting process where I went ahead and, after comparing the very muted color scheme, the very almost dull color scheme, which isn't a bad thing, I just was comparing it to a color scheme that had a little bit more vibrancy to it, and there was something about the color contrast that I just feel like I really nailed in that second iteration of the colors. I tend to not gravitate towards warmer color schemes. They're just not really something that I love to do, but who doesn't love a really deep, gorgeous purple? And so I went with this grapey purple color and really deepened it up and made it kind of dark and spooky. And then I know purple and orange going together can kind of look a little Halloween-y, but I felt like I was going for a muted pale orange, and then this almost pale peachy orange that goes into this deep, dirty, kind of yellowy orange color. And I felt like it worked and paired really well with the warm, violety, grapey color, specifically because on the color wheel, yellow and purple are complementary colors, so naturally they have a lot of contrast. And if you go with a slightly warmer purple, and then you go with a slightly warmer yellow, which would be leaning towards orange, and a slightly warmer purple, which would be leaning towards the grapey purple or more reds than blues, which would be a cool toned purple, you get sort of this adjusted, kind of tweaked complementary color scheme. scheme going on. And then I knew that I wanted to include a green, and I always go for the same soft, like earth green, so I really wanted to push myself a little bit, and I know it might not be the biggest change, but for me, not just going ahead and choosing the same like gray toned green that I always do was a pretty big step, and I ended up really liking this like super pale, eerie, very bright yellowy green. And of course, I got a nice muted green in the bushes and trees in the background, so it was totally fine. Now, regarding the actual topic of this video, I learned a lot about color theory through experimentation. There are so many amazing art YouTubers. Denise Sodden on YouTube, also known as In Liquid Color, is a fantastic resource. I absolutely adore her color mixing videos. She just creates the coolest watercolor palettes, and she breaks pigments down by like their actual like mineral source and like where they come from, and I love her videos. So check her out, and also just like any art YouTubers in general. I learned so much from just figuring out how they paint and kind of dissecting why they choose the colors that they do, and then learning what colors I like, and then kind of trying to dissect and understand, okay, so why do I like this color palette? What about this color scheme is like standing out to me? And then I can also Google and break it down from there. However, one of my more like tangible resources is a book by Joseph Albers called The Interaction of Color. I have the 50th anniversary edition, but I had so much fun kind of flipping through this book. Now, a lot of it is shit that like I can't really do on my own. It's really more of like a manual for like a classroom, and almost like written from the perspective of how to teach people about color. But one of my favorite little discoveries in it was the idea that color is all about perception, okay? And the different colors that you put beside or around each other influence each other. I'm sure that you guys have seen kind of like, if you're part of the art space, there's this image that kind of floats around every once in a while of a square with a small square cut out in the center, and the square might be like a pale red color, and then the cutout square in the center is like a dark green, and then that same dark green is put against another color, say a purple, and that green square in the middle of both of those colors looks like a completely different color when it's around the purple or the red. And that's because of color theory and the way that visually we perceive color, not only through light, but also through association. Another thing that's kind of broken down and talked about in the book is the idea that colors are not easy to remember. So when you ask someone to picture a red, they will probably picture a completely different red than the one that you visualize. And so as an artist, you have the ability to bring to life really specific, detailed, niche colors. And I love that, and I love the idea of that. So if you have the ability to find it at a local library or, maybe buy it on Amazon for cheap, I really loved this book, and I loved just skimming through it and reading the different concepts that I guess professors use to teach color theory. Another idea I really loved from the book was the concept that colors can create space. So remove line work and remove the structure of a painting and build that structure with color. And I don't know, there was something about viewing these colors as sort of like a way to sculpt the environment that really helped me be more mindful and more purposeful with the colors that I'm choosing. You're not just throwing color at something, you're quite literally sculpting the lights and darks. You are creating the contrast, and the contrast is everything in a painting. And yes, color contrast is only one of many. You have size and texture, and there are so many different ways to balance a painting, and, that can get into compositionally, what are you trying to achieve? With this painting specifically, I loved the idea of this gnarled tree coming into the frame in the foreground, and then it's sort of looking like we, as the audience of the painting, I guess you could say, are looking into the frame of reference from behind this tree. So we're sort of peeking in on this sort of strange thing that's happening right on the outskirts of some strange looking woods. And I wanted to build that atmosphere and that lighting specifically through color. I'm not just using black for my shadows and white for my my highlights, but I am quite literally building those colors and building those or expanding those colors into the lighter peach and the lighter purples, and then the deeper, darker purples, and sort of blending those two together to create an atmosphere. And then I'm choosing this bright blue for the eyes because I love the way that it contrasts with the deep purple. Blue and purple play so well together because they are analogous or next to each other on the color wheel. And not only that, but the blue, I feel, pairs really well with the green because they are next to each other. And so you're creating this sort of like set of three colors, purple, blue, and green, in the foreground and middle ground that are working really well together because they're analogous. And they just sort of blend together and bounce off of each other. And then the other thing about that blue is that I kept it a more neutral blue because I didn't necessarily want it to stand out as a super cool toned blue, but I didn't want it to blend too much in the background with the warm toned purple. So I kind of made it a more neutral, leaning slightly on cool toned blue so that way it wouldn't blend too much into the purpley grape, like warm purples of the background. And that's just like a little insight into what I am doing as I'm coloring my pieces. And it took years to get to a point where I felt comfortable with color. I would say it wasn't until incredibly recently, maybe as soon as within the last 6 months, that I got comfortable enough with color to feel like I could genuinely sculpt an environment and create a feeling and a vibe out of my paintings. And even my sketches. I mean, I can recall sketchbook spreads where I genuinely was just looking at them and feeling like, now they weren't in this particular sketchbook that I'm in now, but relatively recently, like within the last year for sure, where I was looking at them and I felt like I didn't understand what I was doing with the colors. I was just slapping them on the page and I felt like I wasn't actually bringing to life the sketches that I was putting on the piece of paper. And that idea and realization is what really made me come to terms with and come to be determined to learn colors and learn color theory, which I don't know. I say that like very loosely because I wouldn't say I'm well versed in color theory, but I kind of have this idea of like color theory being about figuring out the vibes of color, if that makes sense. It's a lot about how colors vibe around each other, how they vibe with you and the audience of the piece. It's how colors, vibe when put in certain parts of the composition of the piece. And color theory is just kind of all of these interlocking color mechanisms coming together to build an entire piece that is not only cohesive, but contrasting through color. I think, anyways, like I said, I'm not an expert. That's just kind of like, I don't know. Color theory to me is just like a lot of vibes. You'll oftentimes see me as I'm completing a piece sort of zoom way out and kind of have the Procreate painting be this small little rectangle within, the screen of my iPad. And that's because I'm trying to mimic, and I know I've kind of broken this down and talked about it a little bit before, but I am trying to mimic this old thing I was taught about contrast. And the easiest way to figure out if your piece is contrasting, whether it be in size, color, texture, shape, space, value, temperature. I mean, the list goes on. And now some of those I feel like run into each other a little bit. Temperature, color, texture, they can all kind of go together. But at the same time, zooming out and taking a step back from your piece is the best thing that you can do to figure out if the contrast in your piece is actually working. Where do you want the focal point to be? Where do you want their eye to go? Where do you want the viewer's eye to go first? Where do you want it to land on? What path do you want the eye to take as it navigates and traverses your piece? Is anything blending together in a way that you don't originally intend? Or is it blending together in a way that you actually like? Are pieces of the painting sticking out to you that you really don't want the eye to be drawn to, but for whatever reason, any number of things that I've mentioned previously, is your eye consistently going to that place? Then you need to rethink your contrast. And you need to go back to those fundamentals: shape, color, texture, value, space, size, and so many more. And you need to start thinking, okay, what am I doing successfully and what am I doing unsuccessfully? And what is what I'm doing creating? I guess just creating. Is what I'm doing creating what I want it to, or is it not? And believe it or not, shrinking my painting into a tiny part of my iPad really helps me navigate those questions and answer them. Especially if I have one in mind. Like for this painting, I was so desperate to try and navigate color contrast. So with all of that being said, I know this is a little bit shorter of a video than what you guys are used to. I apologize for that, but I was just really excited to share this piece, and I wanted to make sure that I was getting something out to you guys. I know my last video was about Marshall, and it posted early, which was 100% my bad. I basically like uploaded it, and I really quickly was rushing off to work and just hit upload for the next day, and then didn't like go back and change it when I got back from work because I just wanted the video to process. And to get it to process, I needed to give it a date, and then I forgot that I did that. So it was totally my bad. It was really embarrassing, and I like was freaking out when I clicked on my YouTube feed and was like, oh shit, that video's there with no thumbnail and no title. It was kind of a mess for about, I don't know, 5 minutes, but oh my god, for any of you guys that have made it this far into the video, I so very much enjoyed your comments. If any of you are those people, thank you so much for engaging with my content in that way. It was really nice to get what seemed like a breadth of new people who were commenting and engaging, and I plan to hopefully integrate a video here and there of my experiences with the kennel, and also just keep me on my toes with drawing dogs, because there are so many different kinds of dogs, and honestly, I'm not very well versed in any of them. So maybe it'll be a little challenge to myself and a way to keep me on my toes and keep me studying new dogs. So yeah, I'm really glad that you guys liked my last video. I hope that you enjoy this one. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say my goodbyes. Let me know if you guys have studied color theory, know anything about color theory. Go ahead and share your tidbits in the comments below. Do the YouTubey things like comment and subscribe. And yeah, hopefully I will be able to see you in the next video. Bye!